Hello and welcome to whatever this Steven Universe thing we're doing is. I think as it shall be called. Steven Universe audio logs.
Unnamed.
Currently unnamed because we're just sort of testing it out by doing a few episodes before we really decide if we're actually going to go with it. You, the listeners, may already know what it's called. Just check the
name.
check
See
the title.
see what we've labelled the file.
Yeah. And then shout it back at us.
That'd be a great idea.
And maybe the name will reverberate through time, and Chris and I will know what to name this goddamn thing.
I think scientists are sending more important things back through time, maybe, than the name of this podcast. This is how it's going to end up being more than 10 minutes. These shitty tangents. So let's go into it.
Let's talk about the second episode of Steven Universe, which is called Gem Cannon.
I don't know what you want from me.
Shall I give a summary quickly?
Yeah, give a summary.
So the episode sort of reveals the sort of a little bit more about Steven's origins. I think this is actually a better opening episode personally than the previous one. It's called Laser Light Cannon, not Gem Cannon. That's just to clarify. Anyway, basically the premise is that it turns out that Steven's mother was a gem, like amethyst, garnet, and pearl, and she gave up her physical form to essentially birth Steven. And he is now imbued with her powers, and that's why he's sort of like human, but also has these gemmy powers, but also doesn't quite know how to use them. Basically, some sort of force is going to destroy the Earth, and in Rose's cannon, it was the only item that they're convinced would destroy it, but they think it belonged. They think that Steven thinks that his dad might have had it passed to him. And Steven goes in search of it while the gems very brilliantly decide to just futilely throw amethyst at the thing in an attempt to destroy it, which amused me no end the entire episode. Otherwise, Steven gets to meet his dad. Well, we get to meet Steven's dad, I should say. And they find the cannon, and in the end, they get it to work, and it destroys the thing and saves Beach City. So that's Laser Light Cannon. Thoughts, Chris?
I love the way you spouted utter bollocks. That clears it up. You know, Chris. Obviously, she was a gem, and she gave up that form.
They say that.
I understand the words, but there's still bollocks there's still no context to them. It's weird, right? I enjoyed this one more than last week's.
Sure,
I have to say.
Good.
Did you bulk watch this? Because still, for me, when it finished, I'd be like, okay, well, why would I watch the next episode? And part of me went, they're only 10 minutes. And then I'm more invested than I was because I found him very endearing this week. Steven. He wasn't like, oh, where's my ice cream? Like, he was a little bit like, where's my fry bits? But that's fine, like, whatever. Dad stuff was done very nicely.
Yes.
The relationship of them, the indication of there being more to the past with the mum, that was all done very, very nicely. Some good character stuff. I still don't 100% know if I'd be tuning in if you were. Do you know what I mean?
If I wasn't forcing you.
If you weren't forcing me. There were moments like, the cannon's fairly phallic. And then, she just puts him on it and rubs him up and down. There's some weird moments.
I really like that because I think the idea is they think his gem, which is the gem in his. You'll notice that, and this is just me giving you some information that you may have spotted, you may not have spotted. But each of the crystal gems, garnet, amethyst, and pearl, they all have gems on them physically.
Yeah.
And Steven's is in his belly button, and it's actually the gem that his mother had. That's literally his mother's gem. She literally sort of, because it's hard to say, I don't want to spoil anything, but basically, as they say, I'm going to use the words they use in this episode so to not reveal more than I can at this point. But she gave up her form to birth Steven, and he ended up with her gem. Mm-hmm. With it being her cannon, I love that Amethyst's first lazy thought was, Steven will make it work, and just starts rubbing him against the cannon.
Yeah.
That's like me getting my laptop and just rubbing it against a plug socket, hoping it will get power.
There was some genuinely funny stuff, genuine, and more. I laughed more in this than I did last week, definitely.
Yes,
and I actually prefer. Let's not beat around the bush. They're like, oh, the eye, it's a fucking Death Star. Fine. So the Death Star is coming. I actually prefer that as a problem and a villain, for lack of a better word, than the fucking weird cockroach monsters last week. Like, that's more. It was more interesting. The characters I was a bit more invested in, and the actual story, story arc stuff was more engaging.
I think what this show does really well, or in my opinion, is the dribs and drabs approach to it. Like, it's the characters aren't gonna. I mean, there's a running joke amongst Steven Universe fans that Steven never asks the 1,000 questions he should ask at any given moment. He goes along with a lot of stuff without going, why are we doing this? And that's one of the ways the writers keep it kind of sort of slow burn in terms of the dribs and drabs of reveal of like what's actually going on. But it's very rewarding when you watch multiple episodes and start to put things together. So it's the questions you have, I promise, get answered. You were pointing out that there's a lot of weird magic stuff going on, like who the fuck is Rose Quartz and how did she give up her form to birth the child? Why was that necessary?
What's with the dad's tan lines?
Yeah, the dad's tan lines.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, it all gets explained. But it's drips and drabs. So you just have to be patient and hope that and trust.
And is the show's called Steven Universe, right?
Yes.
Right, because I never quite knew when you were talking about it before, and I had no reason to dig deeper whether it was Steven and the Universe. But it's Steven. Universe is his surname.
Yes.
Right.
Because his dad is Mr. Universe.
Yeah, I got that today. I was like, oh, it's Steven Universe. Because I don't fucking know. I don't know if it's like Steven saves the universe or.
Well, I know
like,
you've made that mistake on the
universe.
podcast. I literally called it. There was an episode of the podcast where I was talking about it because we were talking about there was a news story on Nothing But Static. But for those listening who don't know what we do other than this, we do a podcast about TV called Nothing But Static, and another podcast very similar to this where we analyze a TV show, but it's called Fringe Observers. We're analyzing the TV show Fringe. I
mean, in a lot more depth than
this
enthusiasm on my side.
Than this. So I think, there was an episode of that where I was talking about Steven Universe of Nothing But Static, and you were like, Steven in the Universe, and I was like, no, Chris, it's just Steven Universe, and you're like, fine.
Yeah.
And you didn't really.
But I had no, my brain at that point didn't know that you were going to force me to watch it for a podcast, so I had no reason to keep that information.
Yeah, evidently.
I think my big takeout from this episode, I was more invested in the characters, it was funnier, I'm warming to it. It's that thing of, I still don't care, but I could care.
Yes, that's nice.
That's any good to you?
No, that's good. That's progress. I'm glad. I think that's. But last week you were very embittered. I think. I feel like.
But I tell you what. I disagree with you a little bit. I don't think this should be the first episode because the first episode, there's time going. Why do they look weird? What are gemstones? Huh? What are they? Do they have powers? They have powers. Okay, fine. I think you get to because the first episode is like monsters and fighting and using powers, and they use the term using powers a lot. They've got powers. I think if this was the first episode, the reason it lets you care about the characters more is because some of that knowledge you're already aware of. And I'm assuming the three other people with the stones become more and more important, and they're not really in this one that much. It's more about him and his dad,
which is
so
nice.
I think that but it's only nice because we've already been introduced to him.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's
Do you know
a fair
what I
point.
mean?
That's an interesting point.
So
I just think that when I suppose when I say this would be a better first episode is because to me the hook of the show for me is that Steven exists at quite a sacrifice. When you think about it, it's actually kind of powerful when you think the idea that his mother literally stopped existing to bring him into the world, and then think about how much that must be very conflicting feelings for his father, who obviously deeply loves his son. And that's what I also liked about this episode is they start by making him seem like he's a bit of a bum, but you learn very quickly in this episode that Greg deeply cares for Steven.
Yeah.
And he's so good with his son and so nice to his son. So they set it out.
But
that
is he
he's
living with his son? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's a little. I can see why you feel that's a little unclear. I'll give you some clarity on that because it's not going to be a big surprise reveal when the show sort of clears it up a little bit. But currently, he is living with the gems.
Right. Okay.
There is a reason for that, and I won't explain that. That would be going into story
yeah.
points. But currently, Stephen is living with the gems. There is a good reason for that, but we won't get to it now. The show does explain that.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, it's
very powerful. Weird though, because this show at the moment is not giving me a tone of we're going to express the father's conflict.
No, but that's what's so great about the show is it manages to go to places like that, and it's interesting because it's framing itself very much at this stage as quite a kiddie show, and it's amazing how much it matures in such a short space of time. Fucking episodes of a lot of episodes of silliness coming for sure, but I think the episodes of silliness all have what this one had, which is like little hints as to what's really going on and little hints at the characters' real feelings. And I don't think there's any episode of this show that's worthless. And I really like this one. And this one was the first time that I got a hint of like the show having a bit more heart to it.
What context did you? And I know we're nearly out of time, but what context did you watch this show?
I had watched a show called Adventure Time, and
presumably, don't worry. Presumably, at some point, I'm going to be made to watch it for a podcast.
No, you won't, because I think this is the superior show. But basically, I started watching Adventure Time, thought it was funny, but got really annoyed at the dribs and drabs of world building. I just was confused. Why is there a stretchy dog? Why does the boy wear a hat? Why is he the only human? Why are there candy people? No explanation for any of the bullshit in Adventure Time at all for a very long time. And so I watched a handful of episodes with Nadia, and I was entertained by it to a certain degree, and I just got pissed off, and I was so frustrated with the technique of storytelling, of keeping it all back and just letting it go in drips and drabs. And
but you kept watching that show.
Well, no, I originally gave up. I gave up on the show, and I left it, and it was like a year, maybe even 2 years later, when I finally came back to it, when someone told me something about where the show went. I went, oh, that sounds awesome. So I gave it another shot, ready and prepared for having to just take it as it is, enjoy it. And you know what?
And you're still talking about Adventure Time here.
Yes. And I watched Adventure Time and then grew to love it. And I think that it taught me a very valuable lesson, is to not necessarily... I think my reason I didn't like it was because I had expectations about what a TV show should achieve. It should be telling me these things. Why? If their storytelling technique is to be a little bit slower about it, and, as long as I'm being entertained in the meantime, and it just sort of taught me to just take it as it goes and enjoy it as it comes. And that's a really valuable lesson. With that then in mind, people started talking about Steven Universe, because one of the writers of the early seasons of Adventure Time, and also one of the creators of my favourite character from Adventure Time, a character called Marceline, means nothing to you, but for those listening, they might be interested in that. The writer that wrote a lot of her key episodes and is very much considered the sort of the mastermind behind the Marceline character, Rebecca Sugar, she then went and created her own show. And I thought, well, that's my favourite character from Adventure Time, and I'm now in this world of just sort of going with these sort of weird, quirky kids shows that have a lot deeper sort of stuff going on. Let me give it a shot. And right. and I went into this with that mindset, and have fallen much, much, much deeper in love with this show than Adventure Time, because Adventure Time has started to actually really piss me off actually. With
but at this point you were, but at this point then you were bulk watching.
I got to bulk watch, I think the first, I want to say 30 episodes. Up to
just curious.
Yeah, I'll point out the point in which I bulk watched up to when we get to it, because I know which episode it is in terms of the story, but I don't know which episode it is in terms of.
If it's like daily, then you're probably still bulk watching to some degree anyway.
Yeah, definitely. The show, when this show comes, this show is weird. It comes in and out. The scheduling, Cartoon Network sort of screw it around. Like, for example, there's a week coming up where they're going to release 5 brand new episodes. From the perspective of us recording this, they call that a Steven bomb, when they drop 5 episodes out of nowhere
Yeah.
in 1 week, one a day, and then they won't have episodes for months at a time, and then 5 more. Or they'll decide
That's
we'll just
weird.
do one a week. Or last year they called it the Summer of Steven and released one a day for like 6 weeks. We got through
Yeah,
one
I
and a
remember
half
you
seasons.
saying.
1.5 seasons in a summer.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
That's mental. What were they
it's Very
thinking?
bizarre.
Just do
Very
one a week
bizarre.
for months and months and months, and just like like have a consistent schedule. And you had that many
Yeah.
episodes back catalogue that you could drop them all like that. Then we wouldn't have to have a
Very weird.
hiatus for a long time. Anyway, that's my venting at Cartoon Network and their
Yeah.
poor organisation of the show. But
I'm in. I'm looking forward to next week. Yeah.
yeah, I hope so. And I will say that, like I said, it's a show that really does grow, and there is some silliness. But I encourage you to just sort of enjoy the silliness in the meantime, and I encourage
Yeah.
you. And you don't obviously. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I encourage you to trust that your questions are getting answers.
As much as I like, because I trust. I trust you. Do you know what I mean? And like, you wouldn't be telling me to trust if that wasn't earned by them. So
yeah, true.
that trust is there.
Yeah,
That trust is
absolutely.
there.
And for those wondering why I now prefer Steven Universe to Adventure Time, Adventure Time started setting up plots and forgetting them all the time. I'm all for ambiguity, but if you just start outright forgetting what you were doing with your TV show, then fuck off.
Yeah.
And also,
A little problem I like to call being burnt by Lost.
but yeah, that's everything for this week. It's still a little bit over the sort of, this is what, 13, 14 minutes in total. So hopefully a little bit shorter next week. We want to get down to sort of between 10 and 15 as a rule.
Yeah, one or two things are going to happen. Either we'll get it between 10 and 15, or we'll accept it's 15 to 20. But hopefully we'll get it between 10 and 15.
That would be lovely. That would be lovely.
That would be
But
great.
I think at the moment we're talking about the show broader. I think we're talking about the show as a whole every time,
Yeah.
because we're still discussing whether you're going to like it or not. But I think once we get a little bit further into it, we're going to stop discussing the show and what it's doing on the grand scheme and start talking more granularly about the episodes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So yeah. Cool. Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you.
Cheers.
We'll come back next week with another episode of
Whatever this is.
whatever this thing is called. I mean, I don't know
See you
what
later.
it's called. Let us know.
No idea.
Tell us. Thoughts to the past, please.
Reverberate.
Reverberate through time. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that was awkward ending. I don't know how to end this show.